I have another laptop now that I'm trying to keep in the podcast room. And that's what I'm using. So I don't have to keep taking my MacBook in and out or whatever. But dude, Windows, it sucks. It's so horrible. I spent I hopped on like 30 minutes early, and I'm like, okay, I'll I know it's going to take a few minutes to set up the AirPods and the camera and this and that. And it's just like everything is so painful with Windows compared to, the Mac just works. 99% of the time, the MacBook just works, but not with Windows, man. It's painful.
Maybe I'll get a MacBook. Maybe I'll get a MacBook in 2024. But I mean, I don't know. I'm so used to having the. I'll have to look at them. I'll just have to look at them.
Well, it's an ecosystem, and that's the thing. It's like, hey, if you're doing something individually, you're just looking for a phone or whatever. You could argue that Android devices are just as good, if not better, or whatever. But I think what people miss out on, and maybe not necessarily miss out on, they just don't use it for that purpose. It's the whole ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Apple TV, it's the iPhone, it's your MacBook, it's your iPad, and the fact that everything is accessible everywhere to me, for me, that just makes it, a whole lot easier. And now they've got the family plan, like they do the Apple One or whatever. So it's like, hey, my kids have access to Apple Music now. They've got access to all the magazines and the news and whatever. It's like, I'm not having to repurchase things over and over and over again for somebody else to use.
So with Apple TV, and probably a lot of our listeners already know this, but some of them don't. I'm a listener. Sometimes I don't know. So with Apple TV, what channels come with that? Like, is it like YouTube TV and Hulu, or is it just exclusively Apple content?
It's everything. So imagine your Apple TV basically being like an iPad hooked up to your TV. So it's like a Fire Stick. It's got a bunch of different apps that you can install. So you can install YouTube TV, YouTube. Like on our Apple TV, it's we've got all the Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff, and it's nice. And then it's also got its own Apple TV channel where they have their own series and things like that. But it's nice because I can take that Apple TV, take it with me wherever, plug it in, and I've got all my stuff right there. It's all accessible. I'm not re-signing it because I hate when you go to hotels and like you sign in to Netflix or whatever. I hate doing that because it's like, man, what if I forget? Is my info going to still be in there? I don't want people stealing my stuff or whatever. And at least this year, it's mine. I'm taking it with me.
That's my biggest problem with Hulu, man, is you can't, like, you have to be associated with the IP that you sign up with, right? And let's just say, I don't know what's wrong with one of our Fire Sticks, but every once in a while, something happens inside the Fire Stick on just one of our devices. And it says, or it looks like you're not home. Do you want to change your location? And if you say no, well, then you can only watch the library in Hulu, which is old shows. You can't watch live TV. But if you say yes, you've only got 4 times to do that before they deactivate your account, because they don't want you sharing and that, to me, that makes no sense, because it's like, it's my account. Why can't it just be like Netflix? I get the sharing part of it. I understand that. But dude, we, all 3 of us, we travel, and it's like, I have no choice. When I'm on the road, I can't watch Hulu. Cause boy, they can sniff out VPNs too, man. They're really good at that. But yeah, so I don't know. So with the Apple TV, another question with that. So is that, and that may sound really stupid, is this an actual television, or is it something you're attaching to your television?
It's something you're attaching to your television. So it's a little black square. It's like 4 inches by 4 inches, little cube or whatever. And it's got a little Apple TV remote and, whatever apps you want to put on there. And then of course, you're buying stuff or whatever. It's just, it all registers with your phone. So you just double click your phone and, boom, you can rent or whatever. But what I like about it, and it's funny because now, it's like when they all came out with this stuff, everybody was playing nice. And now you can see, especially as you've seen with like Netflix, I think their subscribers are going down. They're decreasing. Same thing with Hulu. Prices are having to go up. People are becoming more cutthroat because like with Apple TV, initially when it came, and I think this changed a couple months ago, what I liked about it the best or the most was I can go on my Apple TV app on my phone or there, type in whatever, and it will show me the platforms that show is available on. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm not having to search, because Hulu and Netflix and Paramount, they all change all the time. And at least this here, you could type it in and it says, hey, it's on Amazon Prime for free, or it's on Netflix for rental, or whatever the case is. They have recently removed the Netflix option. on there, so it doesn't show you anymore what's on Netflix. So they still show the other apps, but for whatever reason, I guess direct competitor like, hey, we're not going to show you. We'll show you that it's available for rent on
Mm-hmm.
your Apple TV or whatever. But
well, I don't know all these streaming services and everything. I've got let's see, what do I have? I have Netflix, Amazon Prime, uh, and Hulu. But included with Hulu is ESPN Plus and Disney, and I don't even watch Disney anymore. I think that's all we have for streaming. Oh, and Paramount Plus, because we had to
mhm.
watch 1883 and 1923. But other than that, I don't watch Paramount Plus that much. And like you said, everything's always moving around all the time. So I just go to Google. It's like if I feel like watching Hunt for Red October or whatever, Hunt for Red October streaming, and it'll show you where it's available. But a lot of times it won't say
Right.
whether you can rent, whether it's pay or not. Like it may be on Amazon, but it may be only available to rent or buy. But yeah, it's kind of a dance. It's a new kind of dance. It's not like the TV guide dance we were doing back in the day, or the cable box. Did you when you were growing up? Did you guys have cable?
Yeah, we had cable, and we had a couple. Like, fortunately, my dad liked TV a lot, so we'd have like HBO and Cinemax or something like that. Um, we didn't have like all the premium channels, but we had to. We always had the expanded. You had like, remember, basic, and then you had expanded that had like ESPN or whatever, and then we'd have some movie channels. So of course, my buddies, they were always the ones that would like. Back in the day, you used to be able to stick a paper clip up in the bottom of the box, and you get all the you get all the channels, that type of stuff.
we we had we didn't have cable for a while. We lived in Arizona. I don't even think cable had just kind of come around in the early '80s when we moved from Phoenix to Texas. And I remember one of our people we went to church with, the Russells, I think they had cable, right? And I'll never forget, we were over at their house. Maybe it was a Saturday, and it was the first day that MTV was on. It was the first day. Remember when they rolled out MTV? We were young kids back then, and it really was videos
Oh
back
yeah.
then. And so, somebody mentioned it. I think Chris Russell, their oldest, mentioned it. This dude was crazy. Chris Russell, he was 6'9" and played basketball for
Holy
the
cow.
Air Force Academy, and he did a whole career. But anyway, so he said, "Oh, we should turn it over to MTV and see what's on." And all the parents are just like, "What's MTV?" "Oh, it's whatever." So they switched over to MTV. It'd only been on for like a few minutes. The first video was "Video Killed the Radio Star," and we switched on the second video, which was "Whip It" by Devo.
Yep.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that
I
video?
do. I do.
Where they're whipping, they're doing the whips, and the ladies stand there and their clothes start coming off. That's when they chose to turn to MTV, and they saw that. They're like, "Oh no, hell no!" They didn't say hell no, but they're like, "No, no, no." So they associated cable. I think my parents for a little while. Who my mom is listening again, by the way, because I called her out
Well,
on
that's
the last
awesome.
one, and they
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
watched the YouTube so that they could see. Oh, anyway, so they kind of associated cable with MTV because MTV was included on the very basic cable package.
Yeah.
So we didn't come around to getting cable till 84, 85 maybe. And then, yeah, and I think they eventually pulled the trigger on HBO, but we never had like the platinum package cable ever, I don't think.
Well, of course, the big thing back then there was satellite, right? Like, we never had a satellite. That's what I always wanted. It's like, man, we can't have a satellite dish like my buddies. They get like 9,000 channels and this and that. But we just started. So we do a mix match. So, we had the typical Amazon, Netflix, Paramount, all that other stuff. But we also have Direct TV, and then we signed up for YouTube TV. And I do a combination because, like, you've got extra bedrooms, but I don't need a box in there all the time. But I've been paying for a box in there all the time, so it almost evens out to where I put YouTube TV on those extra rooms, and then we got it for the NFL package or whatever. And I tell you, I'm actually pretty happy with YouTube TV because, like, when we one, like the DVR, to have it with you, it's accessible everywhere, and it's basically just video on demand. There's no need to store it because it's all on the internet. But if you go somewhere and it looks like you're logging in from a different, IP address, um, it gives you 3 months. So it's not like a 1 day thing or sign somebody else out. It's like you can use this, temporarily as whatever for 3 months before it signs you out. And then of course, you come back home and then the clock starts all over again. So they're doing it right. They've done a pretty good job. I'm pretty happy with it so far.
So you have the YouTube TV too,
Yeah.
but you don't have Hulu.
Yes, we
You
do have
do.
Hulu.
So you've got like
Yeah.
almost all of them.
Dude, we've got everything. I was saying, kind of like Apple did with the Apple One plan, they need to do that with the video services. And I know it's kind of, it's funny because the whole point of YouTube TV, your streaming platforms was to cut, the cable cord
Hmm.
to save money because cable just gets, dude, it's stupid expensive, right? Um, but the problem is now with internet TV, it's just as expensive when you start adding in their packages, plus the stuff that, yeah, I said you got to watch. But, like you said, you want to watch 1883. Well, you better go pay your $12.99 for Paramount or whatever. And then on top of that, like most places, I think, your internet data is capped. So generally you get like a terabyte or something like that. And when you looked at like a terabyte 10 years ago, you're like, oh man, I'll never use a terabyte. Dude, we bust through it every single month,
Hmm.
because if you've got, just imagine like, I'm actually running my Fox News off of my Starlink because I have, it's unlimited data. But if you're sitting there and like us work from home and you're streaming Fox News all day, I mean, you're going through 30, 40, 50 gigs a day just on that TV with YouTube TV.
I think that fortunately, the internet service we have is not capped because I don't think it
That's
is.
good.
Which it's funny because it's that wireless internet. Remember when we first
Mhm.
moved here, it was
Right.
it wasn't very dependable, so on and so forth. But then Optimum Internet came out here and finally laid fiber everywhere. So a lot of people
Nice.
switched over, and I was like, I'll switch over. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month, and I never did. And now since everybody's switched over, this wireless is screaming fast. It's three times as fast as it was because nobody else is on it. But I think I said at the very beginning, maybe 2024 is the year I get to finally pull the trigger on a Mac. But it also may be the year I pull the trigger on the Starlink because I was trying to tell my dad about it, and it's after you had left in Arizona. So this is something you set up. You can set it up and get connectivity, but you have to set it up in the bed of your truck while you're moving, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, anywhere where you got a view of the northern sky. So it's just easy for me to throw it in the bed of my truck.
Okay. So you just okay. And how big is it?
I mean, it's like the size of a laptop.
Oh, really? Does it have
The dish itself is the size of a laptop, roughly, maybe a hair bigger.
so maybe like those old or the Direct TV dishes were pretty small.
Yeah, yeah. It's smaller than my Direct TV dish. And nowadays, dude, there are so many people out there. People are creative. They've got so many aftermarket third party mounts for these things. I mean, it's stupid. The big thing now is people are taking apart their antenna, the dish, because that's the brains of everything. Is actually in the dish. So they're taking it apart, and there's something you can do to disable the motor because it moves on its own,
Oh,
right?
really?
It'll track. It's actually pretty cool, dude. You'll sit there and you're like, man, this thing's starting to move. And people are disabling the motor, putting it in like a fixed mounting system, like in a Pelican case or something like that. And then you're just taking the whole Pelican case, throwing it in the back of their truck and plugging it in. And that way it's not moving anywhere. It's right there because it's going to pick up.
Yeah.
And then you can go, wherever you want.
That's now you got me thinking about it. I can't sit here and be silent. Kick it over to Josh so that I can think about it for a little while. So okay, so speaking of that, that's a nice little segue. So we're kind of behind on this one. In fact, before recording, I was like, "What are we going to talk about today?" We've talked about freaking everything. We've talked about everything, but we always got something to talk about. There's always something coming up. But we're a couple weeks behind on this one, but I'm sure you saw the reports where everyone was calling Elon Musk a traitor and all this stuff because
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, the Ukrainians were going to launch an unmanned submersible vehicle attack on the fleet down there, on the Russian fleet, the actual ships in the Black Sea, and Elon Musk apparently got wind of this and geofenced that entire area uh, so that they couldn't use it. So they could, because all these submersibles were using Starlink to, for their, for their GPS and the controls and all that stuff. So Elon Musk shut that off, so the attack didn't happen. So that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. They're like, well, what does Zelensky want, or does Musk want Zelensky to lose? Does he want Putin to win? He's a Putin stooge. And I think Musk's whole thing was, look, if they would have done this scale of attack, it would have escalated everything, and Russia might have, had tactical nukes on the table to use.
Sure.
So the way he was saying it was like, look, man, And I think I can't remember. I read an article where he's not comfortable. He kind of pulled the trigger on that Starlink thing and gave it to Ukraine, and let them use it. And that's their primary means of communication in the war. And there was the whole thing where he gave it to him for free. And then all of a sudden he comes to the Department of Defense, is like, hey, I need a little change here. I can't do this for free forever. So here's what it's going to cost you. I think he went to DOD for that, not necessarily Ukraine. I don't know. He might have gone to Ukraine, and Ukraine just went to DOD. So they did sign a contract with Elon Musk for Starlink, which is not disclosed. So it's a ton of money. But he's struggling right now with, how involved do I want to be in this war?
Sure.
And I just think that's real interesting that he's got an entire system. A lot of pundits on the on Twitter and stuff were like, this is what happens when 40% of your space travel is in one single privatized company's hands. And it got me to thinking, it's like, wow, that is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but here's what kills me, and I just put up the article while you were talking about it. So the Pentagon is now paying for Starlink for Ukraine, so that's something else that's going on top, and it's undisclosed amount. So, like you said, it's an insane amount of money. I'm sure we're paying every month. What is amazing to me, there are a lot of commies out there, man, like true communists, right? Everything should be free. I don't care that a private citizen owns it. You should have to, we're going to force you to provide this service. Like, hey, U.S. government. I mean, remember we had the Iridium satellites up there, which I forget who owns those now. But it's like, hey, you obviously, if a private citizen can do this, so can the government, right? And so even if you're Ukraine or the U.S. or whatever, it's just crazy how many people want to have the government get involved and force private companies, force private business owners, you will do this, and it's like, and then they got all up in his grill, like you said, when he wouldn't do it for free anymore. He's like, hey, you guys want to run this war? I mean, do whatever. But, I sent out, he sent over what boxes and boxes of free satellites. He covered the cost. And it's like, hey, DOD, somebody needs to pay for this. And I believe that as well, because, one thing with the Starlink, I would tell you this, a little sidebar, it does depend on where you're at in the country. Fortunately out here where we're at, there are a lot of other internet options. So my speed's actually pretty good, because Starlink is meant to be for those that are so remote that you just don't have access. Right. But those places, I've got a buddy, those places, he's actually a listener, Spence, those places where it seems like they're that remote, where there is no other access, he's got worse connectivity out there than what I have here, because everybody is on the same satellite. Because there's only a couple of them that go through that airspace. But anyway, he gave the stuff for free. And, I'm like, hey, when my connectivity, because it used to be, it was always good, but it wasn't, I wasn't getting 100 megs a second. I'd pop out like 25 or 30. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I want you to pay for it as well, because my service will get better when everybody starts paying for it. It's like being on Southwest Airlines, right? Which I vowed I'd never fly again, but they gave me a $200 credit, so I got to fly them at least one more time. But when the internet is $8, it's cheap. Everybody's on it, and you can't do anything. I don't know if any of our listeners out there ever use Southwest internet, but it's horrible, dude. It's atrocious, and it's because everybody and their mom is paying the $8 to get on that. American Airlines, it's $25 per leg, dude. I can get on. I literally watched my DVR library on YouTube on my flight back on Friday. It is that good, because you know what? There's probably only a handful of people, most of them probably businesses, that type of thing, got to get, connected for work. But you don't have every 5-year-old on the airplane, downloading Tetris and Pac-Man or whatever the hell it is, nowadays, using it. So it frees it up. And that's kind of my thought with the Starlink, with, Ukraine, all that stuff. It's like, make them pay for it. Because you make them pay for it, at least he'll upgrade their infrastructure. Connectivity will be better for everybody, versus, hey, I'm kind of screwed over here, because you decide that you don't want to fund any of this, and then get mad at him because he doesn't want to continue to do it for free.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would really like to, spend some time really dissecting what the contracts look like between SpaceX, Tesla as well, and as well as what is Jeff Bezos's space
Oh,
program.
Blue Origin.
Yeah, Blue
Is it
Origin,
Blue
and then
Origin? Something like that.
something like that. It sounds right. And then like Virgin Galactic and all that stuff. I'd really like to see those contracts and like the true interplay because Elon Musk, there's a reason he's so rich, and it ain't because Tesla's they can't keep him on the shelves. I mean, come on, he's not rich just because of that. He's getting super rich because he's building rockets that can carry stuff the United States want or whoever wants to put up there. And it's not just the United States, European Space Agency, all that stuff. Really love to look at those contracts because for multiple reasons, but we'll save the nuclear weapons thing for when Josh is on here because he's one want to talk about it. And you haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but the U.S. is always looking at upgrading rockets, right, to transport payloads across across the sky so they can nuke other countries. We got to have better rockets. That's the whole reason there's a space program to begin with. That's the whole reason there was a NASA. I ever tell you this story that I got in an argument with? So I was working for back in my government days, and I had an argument with my manager because I had found someone who could provide pretty good information on Iranian rocket programs, like the Iranian space program. And he's like, "Well, I don't understand how that's a priority." This is my manager.
Lord.
This is my manager. Someone who's been in the field. He's a retired. I don't know. He got out as a major, and he'd been in the field for a long time, and he just in the intelligence field. He's like, "Oh, I don't understand how that's a priority." I was like, "You understand why Iran has a space program?" I was like, "Wait, no, let me back up. You understand why the U.S. had a space program, right? You understand why we were so interested in getting stuff into outer space and into orbit. You know that, right?" And he's like, "Well, for space exploration." I'm like, "Well, okay, yeah, kind of. But the reason it was funded, the reason that was funded was because we were trying to figure out ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. We want to put stuff in space so we could destroy the enemy, right? That was it. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, that was the biggest thing." So, and he just couldn't get it. He didn't agree with me. He's like, "Well, I don't know. I don't think that's why Iran has one." I was like, "Are you this big of a moron?" This was a GS-14. It's like
they just want to look at the stars
yeah,
clearer.
they just want to see space. They just want to go up there and explore space. They want to go to the moon too. It's all good. We don't need to collect on that. This guy's probably an SES now. But that back to the Elon Musk and SpaceX. It's like I wonder if the U.S. is paying him and his engineers to develop new rockets that are also weapon systems.
I think there has to be because this comes down to a good question because he's launching a lot of stuff for NASA and for the U.S. right, but as a private citizen, and this is just all my guess, just what I've read and just knowing how the government works, I imagine that the government is giving him a ton of money to have influence over the countries that he sells his services to. Because if he's just a private citizen, owns a company, he could sell to China, right? He could launch their astronauts or whatever they call them up there, and he could carry payload for them, and he could even launch military weapon systems for them if he wanted to. And I don't know that you would sit there. At least I wouldn't if I'm with the government. I don't sit there and just rely on him being a patriotic American and he'll just do the right thing. So I would be shocked if they have not funded him quite a bit and maybe even overpaying, which is another thing that kills me because the guy's being investigated by the SEC like every other day. They talk about his tweets and this and that and whatever, but it's like, dude, he should just come up like, well, hey, NASA, then carry your own stuff. Hey, U.S. government, then carry your own stuff. Go launch your own stuff. Don't come to me for help. Oh, you know what? The Ukrainians need internet. Go launch your own satellite, internet company, and you provide it to them for free, right? What's that called? Taikonauts.
I looked it up.
Chinese astronauts. Jeez. But it's like they're always on his junk. But I would not be surprised if they were giving him a boatload of money and like, hey, look, dude, we really need you not to start carrying, or providing services to the Chinese and to the Russians and that type of stuff. And maybe even other countries, Iran.
Yeah. And like with the whole Tesla, the self-driving thing, and everybody poops all over that. It's funny how Congress poops on it too, but I cannot imagine that Department of Defense and DARPA isn't involved in it, or at least looking at the results and
Oh, heck yeah.
looking at autonomous vehicles and all that stuff. Because if you could think of how complicated. Our listener Scott sent me a great video from Austin, Texas. Dude, I need to send it to you, Roger. It's from some street in Austin near downtown where all of these autonomous cars, no driverless cars. I don't know what I
Hmm.
don't know if they're taxis or what. They had all converged into one kind of T intersection, and it just caused a complete traffic jam because something overloaded the algorithm, and none of those cars could decide what to do. And
Oh,
it
Lord.
was a mess. There had to be at least 15 of them. 15 of these cars all backed up in one spot, and it was just the humans out there are just blaring on the horns, mother. But it was great. But yeah, I was going to say is the autonomous. Think of the algorithm. Like Malcolm Gladwell, I used to listen to his podcast till he got so woke I just couldn't take it. Uh, he was talking about, remember the whole Toyota thing with the acceleration and everything.
Yeah.
He was deconstructing that, and he was talking about the lines of code that are just in a normal car. The lines of code is unbelievable. It's like on the level of like Call of Duty, for like a video game.
Right.
There is that much code in a car that's not even autonomous. So you think about a self-driving car, how many lines of code there has to be in there, how many factors, how many things you have to factor in. Because that's one thing humans are definitely better at than computers is driving. Because there's so many variables that we can react to in a split second. Most of us can react to in a split second. So think of if they get that right, and you can be semi-confident for like an 18-wheeler to, be driverless. That's the hard part. Complete autonomous aircraft, that's easy because there aren't near as many variables. There's not any traffic up there, number one, not really, and there's less variables. There's temperature and wind shear and all that stuff, but you got to know that DARPA and everybody else is piggybacking on that. And speaking of aircraft, I don't know. I shared with you guys what most people would call a Russian propaganda channel on Twitter. And, we see all the stuff coming out of Ukraine, from their side. Look at how we kicked the Russians' ass today. This one's doing the opposite. And the footage looks real. And it's brutal, dude. The war is just brutal. And I start thinking, man, the battlefield's changed a lot over the past 50, 60 years. But man, drones, that's the new hotness. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I remember in Iraq, the last time I was there, 16, 17, ISIS was, hooking up mortar shells to UAVs, little, off the shelf big UAVs that could carry one with the rotors and everything. And they were experimenting with that in 2016, 17. Brother, that's been taken to a whole new level. It's pretty scary, man. But don't you think that easily defeat, it's not the right thing, but what are your first thoughts on, okay, how would I defeat that? I'm an infantryman in the field. How do we defeat these little UAVs that are going to maybe drop mortar shells on us?
Birds, man. Weren't there stories of like some airports and stuff like that, like having hawks and stuff like that, trained hawks that can go out there and go after these drones and some of them, man. I don't even know if I'd put a hawk up against. So I think he listens a little bit. Alan, he showed me, and this was, man, like, so I had a drone years ago, like when they first came out, and it sucked. Like if you farted, it blew it off course and it was into the tree and then it broke. And I think I bought it for my boy for Christmas and we flew it all of like 42 seconds before it was just completely demolished. Well, he started building his own years later. Dude, like the blades on this thing, when they cut on, you can't stick your fingers in there. You will lose your hands. And he had his, I forget how long it was, but I mean, it was heavy, dude. It weighed a lot. And he's like, yeah, I can fly it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it was. But even now, like my neighbor Steve has one and he can program the route, so he'll program it and, you basically set waypoints. And we see them a lot during like 4th of July and things like that. You'll see all the drones in the air, man. And you program the route. And I think as far as, how you defend it, I mean, one, I think you can look at birds. You could try to shoot them down, I guess. I guess if you don't care where the round lands or whatever, but it almost, you have to have some kind of mini what's that Israel has with the Iron Dome or whatever. You almost
Yeah.
have to have something like that, right? Where you're just going to cover an area and it's like, hey, anything that comes in this airspace is not supposed to be here. We're just going to blow it out of the sky. I mean, I think that's your only option.
That was a concern over in Slovenia. Uh, Anytime there was a military exercise, which, for big military exercise, 3 times a year, the concern was always drones, right? Spying or doing whatever, or just recreational drones getting in the airspace of the Patriot systems or whatever, throwing things off. And so the Slovenians took that pretty serious, and there was a gun they had, and it shot a. Remember I don't know if you remember the movie Dark Knight Rises, where he has that gun that it's like an EMP thing
Yeah.
that shuts down
Yeah.
all the electronics. It was kind of like that, but it wasn't an EMP. It shot out a frequency. Basically, it just shot a frequency. If it was within, I can't remember, 100 meters, 200 meters, you could shoot this, and it would shoot a frequency, a real tight, beam, and it would just fry that thing's navigation system and all that stuff, and it would turn over and crash. They had that. They had like a shotgun type system. It was still a gun, so they had those two things. Seemed to work pretty well. We shot one down one time, and it turned out the guy was he was actually kind of pissed. And it's like, should have been flying it over here, man. I mean, you're pretty close to a military installation. What were you thinking? But yeah, the birds thing, I wrote that down. That's pretty cool. That seems like kind of an insurgent way to, like.
Well, and then especially if it's the birds aren't real, that movement. So what if they're mechanical surveillance birds? That just takes it to a new level, man.
Since I can't remember which one of you guys said that, or maybe it wasn't y'all, but somebody mentioned that to me a couple weeks ago, or I heard it somewhere that birds aren't real, and people actually believe this, like the majority of birds aren't real, like the flat earthers, right? And I'm like, no, come on, this has got to be a fringe thing. I swear to God, I'm in a fairly small town, it's 300,000 people. I've seen 2 separate stickers on cars that say birds aren't real. And they were they weren't the same sticker. They were different. I'm like, what? I mean, of all the conspiracy theories, the flat earth, I could wrap my head around get it? Wrap your head around. Sort of. I can understand how someone could possibly believe that, but birds aren't real.
Well, you know what it is though. It just gets spun out of control. What happens is, because believe me, the U.S. government probably came up with, hey, you know what? We need a better way to surveil people, and for whatever reasons, right? And instead of just putting the black dome camera out there, hey, somebody said, dude, just put a fake bird on top of this thing and put a camera in there, right? Have it sit on a building that's 30 stories high. Who's ever going to? There's a bird sitting up there, and then from there, and I guarantee the government probably did it. They probably had hundreds of them, right? And probably still do. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, now we're up to 12 billion fake birds flying around the country.
I should Google that. Like, how many birds are there in the world? It's probably, God, it's a lot. I guarantee there's more birds than people in the world. It's got to be.
It's got to be billions, man. It's got to be billions.
People are stupid. God, people are stupid.
Hey, though, remember almost every conspiracy theory is rooted in some piece of truth.
That's why, okay, if somebody came to me and said, Luke, I'm part of this top secret, super sap type program, and I'm telling you the truth here. 1 out of every 5,000 birds you see is not real. It's actually whatever. I'd be like, okay, maybe, but like all birds, like the stupid flamingos, those are fake too. It's like, why? Penguins?
Maybe pandas. Maybe your pandas really don't exist.
Dude, yeah, pandas. I think that the algorithms got me, because on my Twitter feed, I rarely get on Facebook anymore, but I think the algorithms got me. Even Amazon's got me, because pandas, plush animals, panda videos, all this stuff's coming up in my feed. It's like, can you not? I know you're spying on me with your algorithms with the microphone, but can you not associate hate and pandas in the same? What if I hated Pepsi Cola? I hate Pepsi, and they start just inundating me with Pepsi stuff. That's just going to make me mad. It's not going to make me like Pepsi anymore.
If they were smart, they'd inundate you with like Coke ads or something like that, right?
Or inundate,
Pepsi. Hey, look at that. Here's Coke.
Or polar bears. You hate pandas? Check out these polar bears over here. I bet you like those. And I learned that koalas are not actually bears; they're marsupials. Yep.
Right.
Oh,
Yep.
You probably didn't see this. The one time I do hop on Facebook, I saw that Carlton Zeus. Did you see this? Do you know what I'm
Uh-uh.
about to say?
Uh-uh.
His daughter, I think, turned 15 or something. I think she might be 15. So the quinceanera, is a big deal. So what does he get her
Right.
for? I want to get her something unique. I want to get her something nobody else had. He got her a kangaroo. There's a
Like a real one?
yes. There's videos of it's got a little diaper on. So he lives outside of San Antonio. There's a kangaroo kicking around San Antonio. I mean, I guess you can have them as pets. I guess that's an exotic pet.
I was gonna say, can you buy? I mean, are there? Well, I don't know. Are they considered like exotic or?
It gotta be an exotic pet. It's gotta be
I
because
gotta Google this thing.
I think, I think that anything that okay. I don't know what qualifies as exotic pet. It's a good question because I was about to say I bet it's anything that's not native to the United States, but that can't be right because I mean, is a deer considered an exotic pet? I don't.
So you know what? I didn't even have to get through like the third word, and it came up. Talking about buying a kangaroo, dude. In 2011, prices for pet kangaroos ranged from $2,000 to $3,000, with exotic breeds costing slightly more. Because of their large size, kangaroos are not usually recommended as pets.
Dude, some of those videos in Australia with those kangaroos, there's a couple of them where you've seen the video where the kangaroo's attacking his dog and he comes up and he just
Oh yeah,
decks him. I mean, that thing is as tall as him. There's another one, this kangaroo's like got this farmer's arm. He's like in his barn or something. And he's trying to chase this kangaroo out through a fence. And this kangaroo puts his arms through the thing. And he's jacked. Like muscle jacked. He looks like a bodybuilder. And I'm like, you gonna have that thing hopping around your house? Those things it can't be safe. And they're wild.
well, I'm wondering
animals.
though. I mean, well, I was going to say. I mean, can you can you train them like dogs? I mean, because that would be cool. That would be cool if like you named your kangaroo like Bob or something. You're like, hey, come here, Bob, and he comes hopping on over or whatever. Right? Put some beers in his pouch or her pouch, or whatever.
Walk that thing around the neighborhood. It would be great. Oh, well, with wild animals, you always hear about like Mike Tyson had a tiger, right?
Right.
And I recently heard the story about why he got rid of it. I can't remember the thing. He
Because you
didn't.
maul your face off.
It didn't turn on him, but it exhibited one behavior one day, and Mike Tyson was like, like it was one
Yep.
little behavior it did, and he's like, it had been gentle up to that point. It didn't bite him, nothing, but it like didn't back down or something when he was like, no, don't poop inside your sandbox, litter box. Maybe it bowed up to him a little bit. He's like, no, no, no. But I do know that with any wild animal, like raccoons, for instance, a wild raccoon is the wildest thing on earth. But if you get that thing from a baby and you bottle feed it, you can have a pet raccoon. So I mean, maybe bottle feed the kangaroo and it turns out okay. I don't know, but
Dude, here's the thing. Like I'm looking at margin of error. Okay, me surviving. Like if my dog freaks the hell out, it's like, okay, yeah, I might get bit pretty bad or whatever, but like I'm pretty confident I can choke my dog out. One, he's lazy as I'll get out, but just dogs in general, right? Like a tiger, he's going to maul you to death, right? He's going to bite your face off. I saw a dude the other day, and I don't know how real it is, but it's a bear. I don't know if you've seen the videos like on Instagram or whatever. So this guy's like out in the woods, and he's a foreigner, obviously, and like this brown bear. And now, relative to other bears that I've seen, this bear is like 6 feet tall, 7 feet tall, or whatever. So not huge, but big, right? And this bear comes and he starts galloping towards this guy, and I'm just like, this guy is going to get mauled to death or whatever, because they don't show how he got there, what he's doing, whatever. But I guess he had raised this bear, so the bear gets up there and stands up and puts his paws on the guy's shoulders, and they start wrestling. Like they're wrestling around the woods. I'm just like, dude, you are stupid, man. I mean, there's just no way that dude is going to that bear. You're gonna step on its paws wrong. It's gonna hit a thorn, and he's gonna rip your freaking throat out. There's just no way, dude.
so
No way.
wrestling, like not life and death wrestling, just play wrestling or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The bear had his paws on the guy's shoulders, and they were kind of
Okay.
and they do that little. Yeah, dude. Forget that, man.
Did you see Grizzly Man? Yeah, it's a documentary about this dude who was up in Alaska, and his thing was, I'm going to live with the bears. And he documented everything. It's interesting. It's an interesting documentary because he did get really close to the bears. The bears did kind of adopt him a little bit, But his whole thing was, as long as you stand your ground with them, don't back down. Like, and you have confidence in your heart, they're not going to kill you. And what happened to him? Eventually, one of them balled him to death. And there's like a 20-minute recording. 20-minute recording. They do not show it. They do not play it. It's Werner Herzog is the guy who did Grizzly Man. He's really good. But he refused to play it's like a 20-minute audio clip of this bear killing this guy. It was eating him. Like, he was still alive. And he was telling his girlfriend who was there with him, go away. This girlfriend's hitting it with like a cast iron pan. And he was still conscious enough as it's eating his guts out to say, go away, get out of here, get out of here. And they never played it, but it's like, geez. So that's what the movies don't show you is like, if a bear attacks you and it means to eat you, you may be alive for a little while that thing is killing you. You know, it doesn't care if you're alive. I mean,
are they meat eaters? Well, I mean, I know they eat fish, but I mean, do they eat like a tiger? I know is going to kill you, but I didn't, you know.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, they do. They do apparently, because when they found his body, the bones were just all over the place, and they'd been gnawed on, and the bear, I don't know, whatever. It was, the movies don't show you that, man. And you mess around with a wild animal. We've been talking about animals quite a bit lately. Jeez. Dude, bears are low on my list, or high on my list of animals I'm not going to mess with. I just, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't even want to think about having to go head to head with a bears. Let's see, bears, gorillas. I would throw chimpanzees in there.
They'll rip your arms off, man.
Any kind of shark, any kind of big cat. Like,
tigers, lions.
Yeah, jaguars.
Woo, rhinoceros. Wouldn't want to play with one of them.
But I feel
hippos.
like I could. Well, hippos are. Yeah, we talked about that earlier when you drew out that figure. I feel like I'd have a better chance against a rhino. I don't know. Do hippos are they meat eaters?
I don't think they were. I don't think so.
Dude, I saw a badass video. I can't remember, on Reels or something, or maybe it's YouTube. Little short where this jaguar's at the edge of he's getting a drink, this jaguar, and this gator just comes out, gets him, and then the jaguar kind of gets away. The gator gets its paw and drags it into the water, and I'm like, oh Lord. And there's still like 8 seconds left, so you're looking at the water, and then like a few seconds later, that jaguar comes out with the gator's neck in its mouth and just dragging it up. It's just like,
good Lord,
dude. Yeah, it's like, and it wasn't a huge gator. It wasn't like those Costa Rica alligators, those Nile alligators. This was, probably about 6-7 feet.
That's another one. Gators, man. Gators and crocodiles. I ain't messing around with them. And they're all over Florida. I mean, it's crazy. Like, oh yeah, the gator's back in the pond here. I'm like, dude, screw that. That is not normal. That is not natural.
No. You've seen the video where the alligator's on the golf course in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought that was fake.
Dude, it's stupid.
Jeez. I mean, but I still feel like, I don't know. You've seen the pythons in Florida too.
Yeah, that I haven't seen. I've seen a couple of videos or whatever, but like where my mother-in-law used to live down there. Dude, I mean, it's like, you drive to her house, and everybody's got little lakes and ponds or whatever. It's like, there's 2 crocodiles over there. I'm like, there is no way you could walk your dog. There's no way I'm going to go jogging. None of that stuff, dude. Forget that. Especially if it's like not like bright outside, right at dusk, right at dawn. Forget that, dude.
All this talk about animals remind me of something. So does Ginger Inferno...
It's making me hungry.
It's making me want to go get a pair of boots. Ostrich boots or something. Does Ginger Inferno still listen?
Yeah.
He does?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like his feedback on this, if he's listening. I don't want to say his name. I don't know if we can say... I don't know. I don't know if he wants to.
We'll leave Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger. So one of my former colleagues and friends, Dina, they're real animal people, right? They got dogs, and they foster dogs, and they rescue dogs and all this stuff, but they just live in a regular house. They can't have more than 4 at a time, and I've been to their house. It's real clean. They take care of their dogs. They take care of their house. So anyway, they had rescued this dog that had been shot in the spine, and it was paralyzed. Its back legs were paralyzed. That's a lot to take on.
Oh yeah.
And so, but they did. They took it on, and I can't remember the dog's name, but they actually got the actual wheelchair for it. Where the dog's rolling around,
yeah,
which is awesome. But but they were just like, with their other dogs, it was too hard. And then they rescued another one who was also had special needs. I don't know what was wrong with that dog. They rescued these two dogs. They brought them back to health, but they were like, we can't do this forever. They both have full-time jobs. Let's find a service who will do it. So Dina reached out to me, and she said, "Look, my wife and I, you heard that right. Dina has a wife. Calm down, everyone out there. Bunch of bigots." Anyway, she contacted me, and she and her wife had taken these two dogs to this place in Chandler, Arizona, where this lady had advertised, "Hey, I take these dogs in." She had all these pictures on her site, you know. So they shipped the dogs to her, and they saw an article on Facebook or something where this lady, this place that she had sent them to, that they had sent these dogs to, was actually not really a rescue at all. She was kind of a dog hoarder, Munchausen syndrome by proxy type person, where she'll take these
Oh,
dogs in,
wow.
not feed them, and just watch them die very slowly. She had like 50 dogs. So Dina and her wife Becca went down there and partnered with a couple organizations in Arizona, in the Chandler area. I think it was Chandler, not Gilbert. I think it's Chandler. But either way, they partnered with some nonprofits down there and to see what they could do. And they called the police, they called the ASPCA, all this stuff, and they actually went to the house, not raided it, but they actually went to the house. And basically, there's nothing the police or ASPC could do because there's no anti-hoarding laws in that area. And it was very obvious that dogs were suffering and all this stuff, but there was nothing they could do. So apparently at that point. So they followed up, and Dina was actually going to ask us to talk about this in detail because she wanted us to get the word out to as many people as possible. And I was like, "Oh, well, Ginger listens. Maybe he'd have some input because he kind of knows that world, doesn't
Yeah.
he?" So,
Yeah.
but the good news is, since we had that conversation, she sent me all these articles. The police did actually go arrest her. But it had nothing to do with the treatment of animals. It had to do with fraud because she had, 16 different addresses. She had ins or something at the ASPCA where she would know when they were coming to do a welfare check, so she would move the dogs out and clean up, and then whatever. So, but she actually was arrested, and that's kind of a good part of the story. But I'd be interested to hear Ginger's take and your take on, the anti-dog hoarding laws. I mean, how much is too much? Who makes that decision? You and I aren't comfortable with the government telling me how many dogs I can own, but where do you draw the line right there? Like, when does it become something that public health is definitely, if it's a public health threat,
Mhm.
yeah, you need to shut it down. But like, where's the line there? We've all seen the hoarders, but where's the line?
I think it just comes down to general. One, you have to apply. I know this is dangerous, but you have to apply some common sense to it. It's got to be general health and welfare of the animal and dogs, especially out here in Arizona. It's a man. Every year you see all these posts about it because a lot of folks keep their dogs outside, which right now is great because the weather's nice and this and that. When it's 115 outside, it's like our dogs don't go outside when it's 115. Okay, they go out at night, they go potty, do whatever. But it's hot. It's hot for a dog. It's hot for a human. It's hot for a dog. But there are no laws in Arizona that really protect the animal. The only thing that I think, in our town, a couple of years ago, they had a lady that she had several dogs outside, and the only requirement, I believe, if I remember correctly, was that there's got to be a little bit of shade and he's got to have access to water. That's it. So it can be 118 degrees outside, broad daylight, sun, just baking you. And as long as the dog's got some shade, which again, how much shade? How much shade are we talking about here? And he's got access to water, which I don't know if anybody's felt water at like 118
Ugh.
degrees, but like we don't have, this, we don't have cold water in the summers because everything gets hot, especially with all the pipes and everything. But you basically have water that's sitting out there at 118 degrees or 115 degrees. Like, is that very refreshing? But we don't have the laws on it, right? So it's like, to me, I mean, you hate to pass any more laws, but there's got to be some type of common sense approach to where, hey, look, I can call animal control and they can do a welfare check. And here it's just they show up, and I remember reading the post like, yeah, like the dog's got shade and the dog's got a bowl of water. That's all we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm sure each state's different, and I would bet that as you go to your bluer states, one thing is our county has a law that if you pick up a stray, and I'm going to be off on the days here, but like if you keep the stray for like 7 days, you are now the owner of that dog. You know?
Yeah, that's so y'all know we recently adopted a dog and he's great, but this place where we adopted from is a rescue, right? But it's a nonprofit. It's not funded by the city or nothing. This lady's doing it out of the kindness of her heart, and obviously because she's got the means to do it. It's obviously her life now, but the stray thing is, I think in Texas, or at least I think, if you pick up a stray, I don't think there is a time limit. Like it is on you to do whatever you're going to do. So the average person pick up a dog and it's like, oh, well, I'll take it to the shelter. Shelter's going to turn you away because they don't have room. So this
Right.
place will try to take them in. But dude, like just 2 nights ago, Friday night, I was driving back home from Amarillo and turning onto, we have a loop that goes all the way around Lubbock, and then East 50th is like where you leave the city, right? At East 50th and the loop. You're on your way out. There's no lights or nothing out there. It's farmland. That's where people like to go to drop their dogs. And it's just like, God, and some people are kind, that's air quotes, enough to drive them all the way out to like Ransom Canyon or Buffalo Springs and drop them there where some community, and they're like, well, maybe somebody will take him in. But they just go out and drop them because they got sick of the dog. Or maybe their dog, they didn't get their dog fixed, so it had puppies. Well, get them old enough and we'll go drop them off. They'll find water. It's like when I saw those puppies,
Jeez.
a couple things went through my head. First thing is always, who does this? Like, who does this? How do you? It's somebody who is conscious, just works differently than mine. But number one, who does this? Number two, maybe I should do something. But then I think of the law, and I'm like, well, I've got dogs at home. I can't bring this dog home. I don't know if it's going to make my dog sick. Nothing. And
Right.
I don't know if anybody will take these dogs. So therefore, Luke didn't do anything. These dogs just run around. They're going to get hit. Little puppies, maybe 10 weeks old. It's like, dude, that's one of the things my wife and I, one of our lottery dreams is, buy a bunch of land and just be a rescue, just take care of a bunch of dogs. But we definitely need to hire some immigrant labor to clean the dog food
Hey, well, you got plenty of it down there now.
up.
Did I ever tell you that? So, Highway 60. So we have a loop, and then 60. It's I think it's like 65, 70 miles an hour speed limit. I kid you not. I saw a puppy thrown out of a moving vehicle going like 65, 70 miles an hour in the middle of the day, dude. I was actually sitting with my wife, and I think maybe one of my kids was in the back seat. Dude, you talking about shocked? Well, one, it's like, again, like you said, like who does that? Like who would do that? Dude, I saw that dog hit the ground. My jaw dropped, man. And it's like 6 lanes of traffic, so you couldn't even get over to like get the license plate or whatever because they chuck the pup, and then I was in the left lane, then he goes up and takes the next exit or whatever. I'm like, dude, who throws a dog out of a movie? What it's no different than the who the two kids that hit the police officer on the bicycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, who does that, man?
Dude, okay, so I saw a video. I'm talking about videos a lot. I saw a video years ago, back when it was still kind of the Wild West on YouTube. Remember the good old days where you could find videos just like, whoa. But it was taken in Russia. I know it was in Russia because the little girls were speaking Russian, and it was obviously rural, very rural. These two girls were very rough looking, look like workers, farmers, farmers' daughters,
Mm-hmm.
This video and this, warning to the young kids listening or whatever is pretty brutal what I'm about to describe, but there's a reason. This girl took this bag of puppies.
Oh Lord.
Her sister was filming her. Took a bag of puppies, walked it into the river, and held the puppies under. There's about 6 of them. Now, horrible, right? That's awful. But they were, I'm not going to call it a mercy killing, but I guarantee, because the girl filming was crying and telling her not to in Russian, don't do it. And she's like, Dad said to do it. Dad said to do it. We have to do this. So she drowns those puppies and it kind of cuts off, whatever. And it got me to thinking, especially when we drove through Romania. That farmer, he could have been a shepherd. Like he could have had sheep, right? And in Romania, as we were driving through, this kind of relates to the Russia thing. We saw just tons of stray dogs, a lot of puppies. So we start asking around when we finally got to Bucharest. And we're like, man, why all the strays? And they had to explain, look, that sheep country that you drove through, these sheep farmers or sheep herders or whatever, they have their dogs. They have like 6 or 8 dogs. They're all male. They don't fix the dogs because that takes away their ability to shepherd.
Sure.
These dogs just run around. So at night, those dogs are going out screwing whatever they can find. So they're screwing another stray down the road, and it's just like, no, we're not going to take pup. No, I've got my shepherd dogs. If I want one to train, I'll get one, but I ain't taking in those strays. It's just they're running around everywhere. So it's a drain. They can't afford it, whatever. They're being irresponsible. It's Romania, dude. It's basically the Middle Ages there out there where we were. But I'm thinking, the farmer, it's like, and these puppies are starving. It was cold. It was winter. We were driving through there. They're starving. It's the most pathetic thing you've ever seen. They're hanging around their mother. But it's like, it makes me understand why that farmer told his daughter, whatever, just go drown them. Just
Sure.
go drown them because they're going to starve anyway. It's a horrible thing, but the person that threw the puppy out the window is in a totally different environment. Yeah. The person who's abandoned the puppy at the loop and East 50th is in a totally different environment than the farmer or the shepherd in Romania or Russia. There's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it.
I guess my only thing with like somebody in Romania, and I get it, there's cost involved, but dude, just put a round in the dog's head or something like that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, dude, because, and I get it, they're animals, but in my opinion, dying by drowning, I mean, dude, that's I don't want to die. I don't want to, die from falling out of the sky. I don't want to burn to death, and I don't want to suffocate or drown. Right. That's like your top 3. Everything else, like, hopefully I just go in my sleep. But it's like, just put a round in their heads, man. I mean,
yeah, for sure. Or something. Good Lord. Yeah. God, talking about killing puppies. It's awful.
So let's change it up. So Colorado, did you expect them to have the performance that they had yesterday?
I kind of thought they'd do better. Scott texted me and said, Colorado's 21% underdogs to Oregon. I was like, I think that's fair. I think 21, I could see Oregon beaten by 21, but I kind of figured with the, with their own hype, their own confidence and nothing to lose. Like you were talking about, they have nothing to lose and makes them dangerous. I thought they might give them a better game than that, but I think Oregon just broke their will real early, and they kind of found out the team that they are. They're a mid-range team, like if that.
Yeah.
If that.
Ugh. Well, you get to a level, especially when you start talking about like your Oregons, where, and you could say this typically with your Alabamas, Georgias, Florida State this year, and LSU's, like, dude, they are just better. They are better at every single position. They're bigger, they're better, they're faster, and sometimes you are just outplayed. You were just outplayed. And then you brought up a good, you threw out there outcoached, and you did it early on before the fake punt.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of crazy because it was great timing, because I was just sitting there, I'm like, man, I never even thought about, them fake punting, which is exactly why they did it, because I guarantee Dion, obviously, and no other coach out there was like, hey, these guys might pull a fake punt. We got to be ready. They were just focused on the return. And next thing you know, it's a 17-yard scramble when they get a first down or whatever it was, but they were just, you were beat by a better team. I hope they do well. I mean, he's already done, they won 1 game last year. They've already won 3, so 3-1. But what, and we've talked about this for a couple of weeks now. I think what's going to happen if they continue to have a decent year, if they break even, right, 500, and maybe even a little bit better, I think they're going to be good, dude. They're going to be good for a couple years, because one thing that they're getting right now, they're getting the spotlight. They are on national television every week. And if you are a player that you're good, maybe you didn't quite get into the Alabama, or you didn't quite get into Georgia, you say, you know what, I need to show my skills, I need to show my talent. Let me get out to Colorado, man, because at least I know I'm going to be on TV every day.
Yeah.
Or every week.
I'm looking at their schedule, and it looks like they're playing USC next. They'll lose that. But, Arizona State, that'll be a good game. They're playing them, Stanford, UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona, Washington State, and Utah. They could break even for sure. They could break even.
I mean, they definitely have some tough games coming up.
I was thinking this. Maybe you and I talked about it. and again, just stop me if we've already talked about this, but with Deion Sanders going there, you're right about the middle of the road. Alabama. They promised me a starting job, but then they recruited this other 5-star. Now I'm on the bench.
Right.
4 versus 5. They might go to Colorado. It's like, remember we talked about the NIL, name, image, likeness, right? You know how much money Deion's bringing in to Colorado right now.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big market. The market is nationwide. So it's like with NIL, I could see this becoming a trend. I could see, okay, Deion, look at all this money he's bringing in here, man. Let's get Michael Irvin to come and coach at where Arizona or Washington State, Warren Sapp, let's go get, I could see this becoming a thing where, and you said it, you were like, because I was subtly jabbing at Josh because I was like, what did I say? Unranked Clemson is giving number 4 Florida State a hard time. Parity in college football is the exact same as basketball, trying to stir the pot. And then you came back, it's a good point, and you said there is a lot more parity with the transfer portal. And I was like, yep, there is, which people are saying it's going to ruin college football. Maybe not. I mean, it's kind of cool to see, Clemson take Florida State to the line, and, Colorado, there were questions in the layperson's mind of, man, maybe they might give them a game, kind of fun.
I've watched more, I've watched more college football, and I was wondering, I mean, I hate the transfer portal. I hate the rules. I think they're going to continue to change them, but I've watched more college football this year than I have in recent years. And it's because, exactly what we were talking about, with the parity. It's like, a couple years ago, even though Josh doesn't believe this, but hey, if you were a top 5 team and you played a team that was barely in the top 25, you were probably going to blow them up by 40 points, right? It wasn't even worth watching. But dude, you look at all the top teams, they are all struggling, and you can't say it's not just like, oh, LSU's having a tough season. No, I mean, we saw Clemson's, their season's done, right? 2 losses, they're done. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, we saw them lose to Florida State. Florida State, a close game with Clemson. It's and beating LSU, but there is a lot more parity in college football. And I think, the good side of it is I think it's going to make it more competitive across the board. And I think it makes the playoffs a lot more interesting. I still don't like the nil the way it is, especially like with Tez Walker in North Carolina. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but I'm all for, if you're a grad student or even a senior, you give 3 years to a school and you want to transfer your last year and go play somewhere else. Rock and roll, man. Like, I have no issues with that. Go transfer. And the same thing with, like, if your coach, right? If your coach quits, retires, whatever the case is, some significant change like that. Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, man, you should have to sit out a year. I mean, that's just.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm all about capitalism. I was looking earlier. I'm glad we're talking about this because I also want to talk about Josh, holy Josh, calling us out on the 7 deadly sins. Like he's, cleaner than a preacher's sheet. But I was looking at Georgia's schedule today because, Georgia, big dog on the block, and I had it pulled up. Now I don't. And I just pulled up LSU's schedule because you were talking about LSU. Man, LSU runs the gauntlet, man. They really do. I mean, they've already played Florida State. They Mississippi State, which whatever. I mean, they're not good, but they're in the SEC. They played Arkansas, which SEC team. They played Mississippi, Missouri, Auburn. Then they have a Army. That'll be a fairly easy game, but Army always gives people a hard time. Then they have Alabama, Florida, and then Georgia State and Texas A&M. And I look at Georgia's schedule, and I'm like, who do they even play? For the rest of the season, I mean, I'm looking, they play Auburn, unranked, Kentucky, unranked, Vanderbilt, unranked. And then finally they play Florida, number 22, then Missouri, number 23, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech. Strength of schedule is not there. They may not lose a game again.
Yeah, I was going to say they can run the table with that.
I don't know. I'm just rooting for Georgia to lose, mainly because I don't like Phil. It's not that I don't like Phil. It's just like, why does
he doesn't listen anyway.
Sun shines on a dog's ass. It's like, why does Phil have to like Georgia? It's the best team in college football for a year, one of the best for years.
It's right up there with like Dallas Cowboy fans. Ugh. Which, by the way, are you watching the NFL this year at all?
Only because I'm a degenerate gambler, apparently, because of Josh. I've got a game going on in the background right now, and Josh was like, I can't remember what we were talking, how it came up, but He goes, I've never gotten into gambling. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a, stop calling it gambling. Makes it sound like I'm a degenerate. And he's like, okay, how about betting? I'm like, okay, betting. Okay, I can get with that. You're betting on games, you know? And then my wife overhears me talk about that. She's like, you're gambling. And I'm like, no, it's not betting. And she's like, how
I'm
much?
betting.
How much? How much are you gambling? And I'm like, it's like $1 a game. Like literally $1 a game. I'm gonna lose $6 this week, maybe. But because it makes it more entertaining to watch. Kind of.
It does. It
Kind of.
does.
Unless you suck at it like I do. Like the Cowboys were definitely favored in this game against the Cardinals. The Cardinals aren't good. Cowboys are behind. So I put $1 on the Cowboys to win like 14 cents, whatever it is. And they're getting killed. The Cardinals
Are
are
they
ahead
losing? Are they
20,
really?
21-10. So your Steelers better come through for me because I put
Yeah,
like
I put money.
$2 on them.
I put money on the Cowboys too. I think I might have actually put like $5 because I'm
Oh.
like you. You know, when I bet, you know, I do the same thing. I throw like $1 on there, right? Carolina game, I may do $2 or $3 depending on who they're playing. But I was like, oh, dude, I'll throw $5 on Dallas. That's a shoe in. Like I actually started because like, hey, dude, like I've got $80 in my account. Like I might throw a 50 on there, right? Maybe I make a couple bucks.
It's amazing. We've talked about it before. I'm looking at how much I put on the Steelers game real quick. Okay, you put
I think I
yeah,
bet $1 on
$2.
the Steelers
I
game,
put
maybe
$2,
$2.
$2 total. So, but it is absolutely amazing how good the Vegas handicappers are. How on
I,
earth, like Appalachia State and Wyoming last night? I was like, App State's good. They've always been good. I've seen Wyoming play. They're not that good. Wyoming's not playing at home. Appalachia State can beat them. So I put $1 on it, and that was going to pay out like 442. And I was like, I got this. So I'm watching the score the whole time because that game's not on anywhere, but it makes it more fun, right? It's like I wouldn't care about
sure.
that game. So it's entertainment, right? So I'm looking at that, and App State is ahead the entire game, and not just by a little bit, like by 16-3 in the fourth quarter. Last 5 minutes, Wyoming comes back and beats them by 2 points, and it's like, how did Vegas know that? How did they know? And I looked at the money line, like the line on the spread, and the spread was like 1.5 points. I'm like, how did you get those numbers? What factors? What are they looking at? Are they using? They've been good at it for a long time, even before AI came around. I mean, what are they doing, man?
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious if one of our listeners, if they have any background on this, because we're not just talking about major games. Like I get it. I mean, me and you could probably sit down on a major game and come up with the over under and the money line or whatever, right? But you've got guys, you've got teams like Appalachian State. I mean, who in the hell tracks that team? I mean, I track them a little bit because Carolina or whatever, and they do their home and away game with them every year. But like a very, very, very small percentage of the country is tracking how good of a team they really are. And I can't say that I've watched more than one whole game because they played Carolina or whatever. Other than that, I never watch them. So they are across the board, especially when you look at all the college games every year, and not just college, football, but you talk about basketball and this. I'm like, dude, these guys. I mean, you see how Vegas was built, right? Vegas was not built off winners. Vegas was built off us losing money, and for me and Luke, $1 at a time. But I'm kind of curious if any of our listeners out there have some background info on how these odds are determined, who determines them, because and I'm wondering if it's like I don't know, like one central committee. Because even when you get on, like, if you Google the NFL odds, and you'll see MGM's got their odds and DraftKings got their odds, and they're all within like not even I don't even say like a half a point, if not the exact same, right?
I
So
bet it is centralized. I bet it's a whole process, man. And I bet it would be super interesting to know it. Yeah, if anybody knows anyone who would be willing to come on and talk about it, which it probably wouldn't, because that's probably trade secret type stuff.
oh yeah,
There's a lot of money in
it.
it. But I get it. I bet it's a whole system where they run all the numbers. I mean, look at all the statistics, right? Height, weight, 40 time, recruiting numbers. In NFL, it's probably whatever, but they probably run it through an initial algorithm and spit out this, and then human eyes probably get on it and factor in like, well, injury report. Maybe there's I don't know, but like it's There's got to
I
be a
mean, we
whole
know it's
system.
automated because the money line changes instantaneously, right?
That's
After
crazy.
every score. And I think that's where you can make some pretty decent money if you've got the time on a game to watch. Because even though we lost money when we were in Arizona, I think it was the LSU game, right? It was LSU, Florida State. Um, and the money line all of a sudden like, drastic swing, like 400 points one way. It's like, oh man, I got to get my dollar in here because whatever. And then 30 seconds later, that money line's swung back. So I'd imagine, I mean, well, one, we know it's all automated because it happens so fast, but I'd imagine you could probably make some pretty decent money if you, instead of placing the bets like we do, if you actually start watching the game a little bit and seeing those swings. You wouldn't be able to bet on every game, but you'd have to catch those where the underdog scores first, right? Underdog scores first, maybe runs back a touchdown. Dude, that's going to be a 200-point swing on the money line.
Yeah.
And if you get in at that point, you can make more.
Yeah. If you're a big baller, you probably
Yeah.
turn over. There are professional gamblers. We know that. See them. Well, you hear about them all the time. But with gambling, I don't consider what I say to Josh. It's like, no, I'm not a crackhead. Take those words back. I'm a refined, solidified cocaine aficionado. So it's like, no, it's just different, But like betting $1, right, on a game to make it more interesting, buying a lottery ticket, which I do once a week, sometimes twice, is just for the sheer entertainment value. When I'm bored, driving or something, I think, man, if I won the lottery, I'd open up a dog rescue or something. But gambling is different. I've been to Vegas. You've been to Vegas many, many times. I've seen, sitting at the One Arm Bandits. My buddy and I sat there for a while, and I can feel my mind going to a place where it's like, okay, I can see how people can become addicted to this.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then you've got your like that movie Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler, where he's just a gambling addict. Bad. That's one thing that's hard for me to understand how someone could get so like legit addicted to it, because I could in my honest moments I could see myself getting hooked on pain pills. I could see myself being addicted to a substance and that could happen. But with gambling, I just don't think that's a possibility. But obviously it's a big thing.
Yeah, I never quite my mother's late ex-husband, he was real big into gambling. And at first I thought it was the money. And it's not. It's not. It's like cigarettes. It's like anything else, right? Those endorphins, and it's a psychological thing more as opposed to the money and making money or whatever. Because he'll win $600 or $700, like slot machines, but it's like, but you put in 1,000, like that's not a win, Or he'll win, he'll go play his 20, win $500-600, and turn right back around and put the 500 or 600 back in there. One of the reasons you like, and again, I know there's an entertainment value to it, because if we're in Vegas for a while, you obviously have to sit there and gamble a little bit. You can't just get up and go. But dude, I'm a percentage guy. If I double my money, I'm out. If I sat down at the table with $100 and I made $100, if I have that option, like I'm not stuck there for 4 hours. Okay, obviously you're going to keep playing. But the one thing that gets me is, so I play a lot of roulette. I love roulette. And I like roulette because in my mind, there's 36 numbers and then generally a 0 and a double 0. So, if I bet $10 a hand, so, $1 chipped, and I bet 10 numbers or whatever, in theory, once out of every 4 hands, I should win. That does not work out that way.
No.
Every now and then I've been pretty lucky. But I tell you what, man, it's like that. But that is how I could see people get, because that almost gets me. I'm like, because I sit down with $100 and I bet boom, boom, boom. I'm like, okay, by the third, fourth hand, I expect to hit a number. Payout's going to be 36-1. So it's like, okay, great. So that'll carry me for another 3.6, hands or whatever, and you should have a win. But you go 5, 6, 7 in a row and you lose. It's like, well, maybe let me just throw down another 100 because eventually I got to win.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No.
You don't have to win ever.
That's one of the things I've got these litmus tests, right? Litmus tests on people where I can tell if they're an idiot or not right away. And one of those litmus tests involves flipping a coin 10 times. Okay? If you flip a coin 10 times and it comes up heads every single time, on this is important, on the 10th flip, what are the odds it's going to be heads? And
Still 50-50.
it's still 50-50. But you would be surprised how many people say it's astronomically low. It's like, no, at the beginning of the bet, at the beginning of the wager, it's astronomical. If somebody said, okay, what do you bet this? What are the odds that this coin, as I flip it, it's going to land on heads 10 times in a row? It's high, astronomical. Because 50-50,
Sure.
you follow the statistics and the odds, it's crazy high. But on that 10th flip, it's still 50-50. But a
Yeah.
lot of people don't get that. And that's what you were talking about. It's like, well, I've lost this many times. I mean, surely is this next one. I mean,
Nope.
the laws of the universe state nobody can be this unlucky.
Well,
Oh.
because it's like it's just like the theory of relativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's relative. The bet and the odds are relative to that specific action. Like you're saying beforehand, yeah, odds of 10 times in a row. No way, dude. I can tell you for a fact that you can lose 10 straight at a roulette table. And that's usually and that's what my wife and I we do. We sit down and a lot of times we play the same numbers, but we both sit down with $100. And if I lose that 100, I'm done. It's like, you know what? We'll come back tomorrow or whatever. And, I play with some blackjack or whatever. But, I like to play with the house's money. So hopefully, we get a win or two early. And it's like, okay, I'll sit here. And, we try to be responsible bettors, not gamblers, responsible bettors. It's like, hey, man, if I win a big hand, I'll take that green chip and throw it in my pocket. And every time we hit a big hand, I throw that green chip in my pocket. So that way, at least I'm going back with a couple $100.
That's the way to do it.
And I could say, very, very seldomly have we left where, we've never left and been like, oh, I'm down $400 or $500. I'm just not going to put that kind of money out there.
No.
Right. I'll do $100. Maybe you throw another 20, but then, okay, I'm gonna go throw 20 in the penny slot machine. And I can hang out there and have some beers or whatever.
So back when I was single, went to Vegas for a UFC, and my buddy and I, we were like, let's do let's do a Vegas thing where we're going to see how long we can sit at a table without, but as soon as I think we put in $200 a piece, we got $200 worth of chips in. We're just going to see how long this will last us. And dude, I hit a flush. It was a let 'em ride. It's a type of poker game where nobody's playing against anybody really. You're playing against the house pretty much. Kind of a combination between blackjack and poker. It's a really cool game. Because everybody can talk to each other at the table, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, I hit a flush, and I like tripled my money. Like I had, I went from 200 to like 650. It was crazy. So it's like, all right, well, that means we can sit here longer. So every time we won, it was like that means we can sit here longer, and we ended up sitting at that table. Like not straight, but like for 3 days in a row for 6 to 8 hours at a time, and eventually we lost all our money, of course, because the house always wins. But I lost $200, and it was a lot of entertainment. Got to know the dealers, got to know the people around the table. It was fun.
Free drinks,
yeah. And so the people that get addicted, it's just something in the brain. Like you said, it ain't about money.
It is depressing though, and the feeling when you're down to your last bet. It's like that. What's that movie, Indecent Proposal? Where they're at the roulette and it's gonna be black, and you reach across. It's like, man, especially back in the days when I was poor. My wife and I would go to Vegas. We had like $50. Yeah, not very responsible, but it's like, here's my last $2 in the blackjack bet. And I'm just like, man, and then inevitably, the cards come out and it's like a 14. Like, this is gonna be bad, and you just get this feeling of like depression, man. I'm just like, yeah, this sucks. This sucks.
It's all over now. We got to go back to Vegas, man. I got to take. My wife's never been, and I'm telling you, I tell her, like, it's not what you think. It's just not what you think. You go see a couple of shows, get some good food, get that casino experience. But her only casino experience, get this, is the live casino at Arundel Mills Mall.
Oh my Lord. And she lived to tell about it.
Yeah.
Good Lord, man.
That place is, remember Roy used to go there on his lunch breaks. You remember that?
Good Lord, dude.
I've heard he's really good at craps though.
He probably is, and I think Jim plays a lot of craps as well. So they, I've watched it a couple times. I never really got into it. I don't, I need to look more into the odds. I like the roulette because it's very simple to me, very easy. The problem with blackjack, I used to play blackjack early on, but the problem with that is it just doesn't pay out enough.
Yeah.
Right. You sit at a table with $20, man, it'll be gone like that because even your wins, they just don't pay out enough.
Yep.
Like a roulette or something like
Well,
that. But
see,
yeah, craps, you can definitely let it ride.
the thing about Vegas, I didn't know until a few years back, is a casino has the right to not let you play anymore. And there are a
Sure.
few people, Dana White, who used to be the president of the UFC, now he's the CEO. He is no longer allowed to go to one of those casinos there because he's just too good. He's just too good at
Wow.
blackjack. And I can't remember which casino it was, but they're like, politely, Mr. White, you're no longer welcome here, basically. So he pulled all his UFC events from that casino. He's like, that's BS, man. Just because I'm good.
Holy
That's
cow.
like card counting. I think maybe we did talk about this maybe 100 episodes ago, where card counting is cheating. It's illegal, right? It's cheating. Well,
Sure.
how can that be cheating? That's a skill that I have. I figured out the game.
Right.
Just because I'm cheating because I'm smart. That's just
Yeah.
come on. That whole MIT crew that went down there and took Vegas for all that money, and then they did it AC.
Yep.
It's like I guess casino, it's their rules, but I always thought that was interesting. They can bar you for being good at gambling.
Like you're actually winning money, so yeah, you can't come back here. And I'm like with you, like with the card counting thing. I mean, of course now they throw like 10 decks,
Yeah.
and that's why they don't play it all the way down to the end, right? They use like 10 decks, they play it down to like 3 decks left, and so it just makes it that much harder to count cards. But to me, if I'm not using anything external and everything's in my head, I mean, one, prove that I'm counting cards. Like,
Yeah.
what are you, a mind reader now? You're like the only mind reader. Yet the only 100 mind readers in the world happen to be in Vegas.
That's where I'd be if I was a mind
Atlantic
reader.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to switch roles. Well, actually, talking about the Dana White thing for our wrestling fans out there. So they merged now. I forget what it's called, but the company now owns WWE and UFC.
Yeah.
And I don't think Dana White's overly happy about that, even though he's the CEO of the whole thing now, because there's a lot of, they want to cross pollinate. I say I think some executives want to cross pollinate because they do see, the life of a UFC fighter, man. I mean, if you're successful, you can hang around for a few years. But what I've learned with the UFC is once you get those first couple losses, it's usually over, right? They figured you out. So it's just very, very tough to stick around. And I don't know what the lifespan of a UFC fighter is, but I'd imagine it's, you probably get a good 5-6 year run. TKO. Thanks. But I think there's this talk and this desire to want to cross pollinate to where, hey, you're a UFC fighter, you did your 5-6 fights, and now we're going to bring you over to the WWE, and you're going to, kind of like the Brock Lesnar's, right? And then you're going to go to WWE and become a wrestler for the next 20, 30 years. And I think that a lot of the wrestlers are pissed off because it's kind of like, no, this is our profession.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we do. You're not just going to come in here from the UFC. I mean, you get your freaks of nature like your Brock Lesnar's, Kurt Angles, those guys that have a legit amateur background. But it's like, no, you're not just going to come walk into our sport and then all of a sudden because you had a name in the UFC and push me out, and I've been here 20 years doing this, right? And then you got to look and say, hey, how many WWE wrestlers are going to go possibly into the UFC? I mean, we've seen Bobby Lashley do it. Obviously Brock Lesnar went from amateur wrestling and then UFC and then WWE. But I'd be kind of curious to see if there's any that go the other way, and kind of wondering how the marketing and the promotions are going to work. It's like, do you have? Well, one, they want to legalize betting, right, on the WWE, which is, dude, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
That's like, man, this thing is like truly, truly fixed already as it is. Like, how are you going to bet on something that's already fixed? But for those WWE fans out there, and this is due to the writer's strike, and I never even thought about this, but because of the writer's strike, The Rock and Cena aren't doing movies, right? Because a lot of the movie studios are shut down. And so last, one of our listeners, Damon, he hit me up and he's like, oh, you got to watch this SmackDown or whatever. And The Rock makes his debut, first one in like 4 years. And then Cena comes out, shortly after, and they were loud pops, dude. They were super, super loud pops. So for those that, if you have YouTube TV or you record it, for those wrestling fans out there, definitely go back, and not this past one, but I think now it's 2 weeks ago. But it'll be kind of curious. I always hate when they bring back the legends like that because they're not hanging around. And so, they're just going to go in there and get their asses kicked because they're going to be expected to put somebody else up. Right. So, Cena's going to get his ass kicked by whoever, and The Rock's probably going to lose like Austin Theory, whether it's cheating or whatever. But you want to see these wrestlers like when they were back in their prime and their heyday, and it's like, no, they're only coming back because they're going to get involved in a storyline, and at the end of that storyline, they're expected to put up the other younger wrestlers. So those that have DVR capability, whatever, go check it out. It was pretty loud pop. I don't know if you got anything on that.
Yeah.
If not, I got a question.
Hold the question for just half a second. Yeah, the merger, I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I'm all about both companies doing well, for sure, because I do like both products, for sure, for different reasons, obviously. But I do like the performance aspect of both of them. We talked about this. I know there's probably some listeners that when we talk about wrestling, they tune out. But I know Kurt is not one of them, and I know Russell is not one of them, and Ryan, all these people. But I love the performance aspect and the athletic aspect of wrestling for different reasons than UFC. I mean, UFC, your life is on the line, but in wrestling, some of the stuff these guys are doing, your life's on the line there too. What I worry about,
it's incredible.
It's yeah. I was listening to the Kurt Angle podcast with Joe Rogan, and I've seen his biography on A&E. Unbelievable how many injuries that dude had. But what I worry about is for the layperson who's getting into UFC, for instance, does the merger with WWE, where everything is scripted, does that do damage to the credibility of the fights within the UFC? Is there going to be some transfer of, oh, well, all this is just scripted, some unconscious transfer of, oh, well, it's all just scripted anyway. I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I don't think it is. All you got to do is go to a UFC event and see that shit's not scripted. I mean, it's brutal. But yeah, it will be interesting. I like, hardcore actual wrestlers who are really good, have been in for a long time. I've been listening to all these podcasts and watching the A&E biography. I think that when the athlete comes straight off the football field or straight out of the UFC, it goes right into wrestling, is without the type of lumps that your Kurt Angles had to put in before they even let him get in the ring. They made him go down to the South and wrestle down there, so you can learn how to do it. The guys who, like the Ken Shamrocks, remember he went over, Cain Velasquez. I've heard that those guys, when they came over, they were just so stiff. They were so stiff and they were hurting folks. Like, what was his name? Goldberg. Goldberg's probably one of the stiffest wrestlers ever, and he was super strong. It's like that. Your old school wrestler who's put in the time and the lumps, they're scared to get in the ring with them because this guy's going to hurt me because he doesn't know how to do the moves. And I don't know. I think there are a few UFC fighters that could make that transition. If anything, they're seeing people like Conor McGregor, and they're just like, holy crap, we can make a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
And, like the Jake Pauls or whichever Paul brother it was that went over there, Logan, I think. What I'd really like to see before we move on is for them to get a major boxing promotion in there as well. So WWE
boxing sucks.
I know, but it could be good. That's the problem.
It could be.
And I think that somebody like Dana White and Vince McMahon, for how much ever time he has left, that dude's 70. He's 2 years younger than Biden, and he looks like a bull. That guy's incredible. But if they could get a legit boxing promotion in there, make boxing great again. I think that would be really cool. And maybe that's where they're going with it. I don't know.
I don't know that they want boxing because, I mean, here, make no mistake about it. The reason why MMA and UFC is so successful is because boxing sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, when you had, once Tyson went away, Lennox Lewis was there for a little bit, Holyfield, but, to me, I think once Lennox Lewis, it seems, once he retired, and even before then, I want to say towards the end of the Tyson years, just because of the level of competition you had and the personalities involved, but half of the fights were fixed. We know that. It just was boring, man. They had a lot of these paper fights, and the reason, that was the time when the UFC was coming up, and believe me, the reason why people liked the UFC, especially I'll put it this way, the reason I liked the UFC was, man, it was real. It was real. And when I say real, there's a difference between obviously watching a wrestling match in the WWE where, they'll sit there and they'll slug it out in front of each other. And hey, man, they watch the UFC. That doesn't happen. Very, very seldom does something like that where two guys are just going to stand there and just punch each other in the face. Because you know what? That shit hurts. right? Like nobody likes getting punched in the face. I don't care what you do. And so the UFC was real. And it was just this feeling that boxing just like, you know what? Half this stuff's probably fixed anyway. The personalities aren't there. Then you've got all the different federations and this and that. And it's just like, you know what? Screw it. And Dana White, being the shrewd businessman that he is, turned it into $1 billion empire.
And
you know,
there are a couple of the matches are so hard to make in boxing too. You never get two guys at their prime.
Yeah.
Ever. It's like, and Floyd Mayweather is partly to blame for that because he's like, I ain't fighting Manny Pacquiao in his prime. Are you crazy? I'll fight him 10 years from now, but I'm not going to risk that loss. But there are a couple of good fighters out there now, like Tyson Fury. Have you watched any of his fights?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy is something special. And I looked at it, because his physique, I mean, his physique doesn't look like
he does not look.
The Gypsy King is what they call him.
Well, I mean, look at him. Was it Dante or Deontay Wilder?
Yeah.
When they had that. I mean, just I know it's stereotyping, but just looking at you like Tyson Fury is going to get killed.
He's going to get killed. Yeah. And and Ruiz back in the day, he was the same way. Just this fat looking dude. It just doesn't look like he's in shape, and he's just a thunder cannon. But yeah, I mean, Tyson Fury is fun to watch. He's tough. He's a gypsy, like a self-proclaimed, I am a gypsy. I am Europe's white trash, and whatever. You can do with that what you want. He is so good, though. He is so good. It's crazy. He's fighting a UFC fighter pretty soon, Francis Ngannou, and he's just going to kill Francis. He's just going to kill him because it's a boxing match. It's going to kill him. It's going to be.
Yeah, I've watched a couple of his fights, and it's same thing you just said, man. You seem just like, man, this dude's going to get knocked out in like the first 3 rounds or whatever.
He's the closest.
Dude packs a punch.
He does, and that it's. Oh, Josh is. Oh, we got to cover Josh before we get off. I don't even want to wait to make that announcement, but he reminds me. Tyson Fury is probably the closest thing to Muhammad Ali that the boxing world has seen since Muhammad Ali. He is. He's
right.
He's that good. But anyway, what question were you going to ask?
Well, I was going to shift focus a little bit to politics, obviously, but Bob Mendez, man. So what do you think? Guy guilty?
Guilty.
Give us your take on the Bob Mendez, Senator Mendez.
That guy. So he
or Menendez. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He got acquitted of something similar, but not as in your face, not as egregious. He got acquitted because the jury couldn't decide on it, right? This one, gold bars, envelopes full of cash. I think it's mainly
gold bars, dude.
Gold bars. It's like, dude, what are you, that James Bond movie or something? From Egypt, all with Egypt, right, or most of it.
Yeah, most of it.
And here's the thing: it's like people on both sides are doing it.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad Menendez got. Yeah, me too. He's corrupt, but to me, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference if he's a Democrat or Republican. I'm not going to circle my wagon around a Republican who's got gold bars and envelopes full of cash in his house. It's all of them are not all of them. A lot of them are doing it. So it's like, good, caught another one, burning down. Democrats don't circle your wagons, and it doesn't look like they are. By the way, I think they're going to let this guy burn. But he's a sacrificial lamb. It's like, look, see how clean we are on the Democrat side. We don't stand for this stuff. So Biden, since we're not doing it to Biden, he must be clean. But again, this has been a long investigation. I think it is a long time coming. Crooked, just crooked.
Yeah, and I think it's I agree with you. I think they're going to let him burn because as far as the Democrats go, you almost have to, right? I mean, because you get all this stuff going on with Hunter Biden, all this stuff, and now they're trying to tie Joe with Menendez. They're like, hey, there's some emails there that are linking the two together. Now, I was actually looking for the text you sent out with a tweet basically saying, hey, dumbass, you're supposed to run all this stuff through your son.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, you're supposed to launder money through your son. Amateur hour in New Jersey from Joe Biden.
But that's the thing, you go back to Hunter Biden and Joe, and you said this before, and I kind of, I didn't give as much thought until, you start having conversations on Twitter. It's influence peddling and plausible deniability. That's exactly what it is. People are like, show me the facts. Where's the dude? There is so much evidence there. It is influence peddling and plausible deniability. That is exactly what is happening. Now, can you prosecute over that? And I get it. You have to have paper trails or whatever, but I think when you look at believe me, Bob Menendez is not the only senator doing this, right? Pretty clear. And oh, by the way, people knew what he was doing, and there were other people involved in this thing. So what'll be interesting is if he does end up burning, does anybody go with him? Does he start taking? You gotta believe that there's a circle of 4 or 5, probably both GOP and Democrats, right? It's not just the Democrats are the bad guys. GOP is just as bad, but you got to wonder if other things come from this. And then I'll be kind of curious to see where this prosecution goes. Does he start to throw some names out there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe we don't prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. I mean, do you think there's any ties there, maybe with Joe or some other senators that end up coming out of the woodwork?
From him, I don't know. Maybe spinning off the investigation, maybe, but I don't know. These people, I don't want to get conspiratorial. I always said I don't want to get conspiratorial, but I'm going to say this: that the tendrils of corruption and just dirty, dirty stuff run deep in DC.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? So you had, and I blanked on the guy's name that got shot, Paul, the guy that got shot, the Clinton aide that got gunned down in a
I don't
robbery at
remember his
5 in the
name.
morning, because he had dirt on the Clinton. All there's some where there's smoke, there's fire, and I have information that would lead to the indictment of Hillary Clinton. A lot of people find themselves dead. Jeffrey Epstein, found himself dead, mysteriously dead. And back to Menendez, it's like if he starts ratting people out, I guarantee there are backhanded threats, like threats that are being made that don't even need to be stated. He's seen enough to know that if he does anything like that, it's not going to be good. That said, yeah, I don't know, man. I think he's going to go down. I don't know if he'll do any jail time. We'll see. But these politicians always seem to escape. But the days of Kay Bailey Hutchison, back in the '90s, I was in college, and Kay Bailey Hutchison got caught doing some campaign finance stuff. Right, that
Hmm.
was pretty illegal, and she got up and made a speech to Congress, uh, basically saying, "I didn't do anything that all of you are doing already, and if you try to do this to me, I will burn this place to the ground. I'm taking every one
Yep.
of you with me." And she didn't say those words, but that's what I got from it. And I'm like, oh my god, this is dirty. And guess what happened to Kay Bailey Hutchison? Nothing. She got ambassadorship to NATO later on, you know, and whatever. So yeah, it doesn't do anything to boost my confidence in our uh, representatives. That's for sure.
Well, especially when it's so blatant, right? I mean, you got these guys that it's one thing for what like a Trump where he comes in theoretically as a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever you believe his finances are, and he's already got that kind of money. Versus people that come in are elected, off your 170 some $1,000 a year. Next thing you know, you're worth like 50 million. It's like, so you weren't a financial genius at any point up at any time up until this point in your life. All of a sudden you're elected and now you're a financial genius. Dude, it's clear. It's plain as day. And I kind of like what, Josh has thrown this out there a couple times, where, and I think there's even a bill that's being introduced now where, they can't actively trade. And a lot of that stuff gets hard, right? Like, how far do you take that? Does that impact 401ks and IRAs? I mean, it gets really, really, it'll never pass. Let's be real. We all sit here and talk about it. It's a pipe dream. It'll never pass. But just like term limits will never pass either, right? But you know, you were poor for most of your life or not a millionaire. You get elected, and then all of a sudden you're worth 50 million. Look like the Pelosi's, right? So now you're a financial genius. You couldn't make 100 million before now, but now all of a sudden you're smart. But dude, it's very clear.
Yeah, and I think it's human nature. I mean, I think like Dan Crenshaw, for instance, he's one of the top earners uh, in Congress, in all of Congress. He's like number 7 on the list or something of how much he's actually worth, compared to where he started. I think it's human nature. Everyone starts out and it's like, well, what I'm doing here is not necessarily illegal. Like, okay, this person, this group is going to pay me X amount of dollars to go speak at their event, right? And it's a
Mhm.
lot, $75,000 to speak at an event or something, or that'll go into your campaign or whatever it is. You go speak at the event because that's not illegal. I've looked at the rules. That's not illegal. And maybe you meet somebody
Sure.
at the event, and the person you meet at the event said, "Hey, here's my son Johnny. He's really trying to get into Yale law. It really would mean a lot to me if you would, maybe write a letter recommending him." Sure, I'll write the letter. Maybe you say you do it for free, and that person sends you, uh, voucher for a trip to Tahiti or something. Hey, I just wanted to thank you for helping me. I mean, gifts and stuff like that. I think it starts off innocent with a lot of these people. They feel the power,
Sure.
and and then it just goes. But yeah, it's with with the stuff that comes through Congress. Obviously, you have the inside track on the stock market, and that's just all there is to it. What to short, what not to
Yep.
short, when something's gonna, when there's gonna be an IPO. I mean, certain committees in Congress, man, make a lot of money off that. Make a lot of money
Defense
off that.
contracts,
Oof.
money going to Ukraine. So real quick, because I know we got a few minutes left here, I actually want to. I'll leave it up to you. So Josh sent us a text because he obviously is not with us. He's here with us in spirit, and Josh's text says, "You guys right now, Roger, Trump is up big on Biden. I feel the tide turning. People really want Trump. Can't wait to vote for him." And then he says, "Luke, yeah, crazy. Dude's got 2016 energy. He is so anti-Trump at this point. It's almost funny, right? It's almost funny." So I'll throw out the Trump thing and get your overall thoughts. Has anything changed? He's had the indictments, his poll numbers keep going up. And again, I get it. They're polls, right? And I think you threw it out there the other day how Fox News conducts his polls and random phone calls. And it's all junk, which is why the numbers are off so much. But I had something else, but I forgot what it was. So you want to jump on the Trump topic and give us some final thoughts on that?
Well, the big thing was with the Trump stuff. Funny, Josh, right? Was I messaged you guys and said I bet Roger when he wakes up and sees the ABC Washington Post poll will have a moment of ecstasy. Put it to that way, where it shows that Trump is up 10 points in a general against Biden. I don't believe that. I just do
No.
not believe that. And looking into the poll, it was weighted really heavy with young voters, and I'm like, well, then I definitely don't believe this. What young voters did you talk? Did you call Nick Sandman and talk to all his friends? Is that what it was? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
So with Trump, again, I'm going all Kurt Schlichter with this. It's like I don't think he's the best candidate in the general. I just don't. But if he is the nominee, I will vote for him. I get
Do
what
you
he's
see Kemp came out and said that he would back him if he became the nominee?
really.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I think that you're not a true. I don't. This is such
Well,
a
he basically
silly.
said, "Hey, he's better than Biden."
Well,
So
yeah,
anybody's better than Biden, and so yeah, you would vote,
yeah.
that option in.
Anybody is yeah. Anybody's better than Biden. I mean, it's hard to say that Mitt Romney's better than Biden. Ugh, ugh. But yeah, I with Trump, it's strange. He's better than Biden. He's better than anybody on that side of the aisle, as far as I see. Like if Manchin runs, even Manchin, I don't know, But I'd vote for whatever. It's hard to say. I'd vote for Manchin over Romney. How about that? You know what I'm saying? I'd vote for Manchin over Romney. My feelings on Trump haven't really changed. Although I will say that the more I talk about it, the more you bring up certain points about like Michigan, Pennsylvania, especially Michigan. Um, I think that there is a semi believable path to victory. It's not completely out of the realm that Trump could win. Um, I just see a lot of people staying home if when Biden runs. I see a lot of people staying home. And Larry Elder brought up a good point today. Uh, he said that because I think Maria Bartiromo was saying, well, what about do you think Biden's going to run? He's like, he has to. She's like, well, why? He goes, well, because if they run Kamala, they know they're going to lose, and they can't run Gavin Newsom instead of Kamala because they will lose a
Right.
significant portion of the black female vote, a significant portion. Because he was saying people don't understand how popular she is with black female voters in general, and it's hard for us to believe that, because God, she's just such an idiot. But for a lot of people, it's all about identity politics. It has nothing to do with substance. So yeah, I don't know, and I think you're right. I think that we'll see what happens in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, but I don't think that there's anything DeSantis can do really. I don't know.
Yeah, you run out of answers on that stuff because we were going back and forth with Josh over the week, and he was talking about the MAGA crowd and this and that, and and I hadn't really thought of it, and with this from this perspective until we were chatting back and forth, but it's not even the Trump supporters, right? And it's not Trump's job to give support to other candidates. The other, kind of like Trump just needs to drop out, drop out, drop out, whatever. The other candidates need to garner their own support. And let's say you take Trump, let's say you take the polls for what they are, and he's at 55% of the Republican votes right now, right? If you look at 538, he's at 55%. That means there's 45% left out there. And here's what is disappointing from the Ron DeSantis campaign is, hey, your job is to grab that other 45. Maybe that's the solution. That's the path you should take where, hey, forget about those 55 that went to Trump. We need to make this a two-person race, because I do think Ron will hold his own on a one-on-one debate. And I think he's got great past performance from Florida. But maybe the answer is, hey, screw that other 55. Like, I need to secure this 45. Because right now he's getting his ass kicked by Nikki Haley. When you look at like New Hampshire, I think he's actually tied with Chris Christie of all people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, seriously, dude. Like, dude, if you were tied with Chris Christie anywhere, you have problems. You have some serious problems.
That's why it's going to be so interesting to see how it goes, because I do know that Chris Christie has put all his eggs in the New Hampshire basket. I know he's done that.
Yeah.
And so he's put a lot of groundwork there, a lot of legwork, a lot of money. But yeah, DeSantis, again, could be running a better campaign for sure. He could. But every one of those candidates are hamstrung by Trump in the fact that the media wants Trump to win. Trump takes the air out of any room where he has anything to do with what's going on in the room, like the last debate. He took the air out of the room. He wasn't even there.
Sure.
Everybody's thinking about Trump. Everybody's going to be thinking about Trump in this next debate. So it's like, could DeSantis be running a better campaign? Absolutely, sure. But it's so difficult when Trump's on the ticket. It's just the media is the big thing. The media wants to talk about Trump all the time. The media definitely wants Trump. I'm telling you this. The media wants Trump to be president again. Like the CEOs do. Maybe the reporters don't, but the CEOs do. Man, are you kidding? He's great for business. So it's like, it's just tough. It's going to be tough for any candidate. And, maybe DeSantis is thinking, you know what, this is just a good thing to get my name out there and not make myself look like a complete ass and, run again in 28. Who knows? And I've decided, though, Roger, that I think that we should save the Josh announcement for when he's actually here, because Josh has got some big news, and I don't want to say it while he's not here. So, big news in a good way, I guess, but interesting news. How about that? I don't want to spoil it. I want him to be here so he can defend himself.
Sure. And and I think we've said it before that the Trump path is difficult. I do believe his path to victory lies in what you just said, that voters will stay home. I'm not necessarily as pessimistic as Josh is, where he can't win. I think he can win. And when you look at, again, the numbers here in Arizona, the numbers in Georgia, they lost by, 10, 11,000 votes is nothing, right? Especially if your base is fired up. But I think that he's really, really going to have to count on some Biden voters just not showing up. I mean, maybe it's the exact same thing that happened, that got elected, Trump elected in 2016, where people are like, oh yeah, I voted for the other guy. Yeah, you went in there and you closet voted for Trump, right? Maybe it's a lot of the, oh yeah, I voted for Biden, and then all of a sudden you see that, wow, he didn't get 81 million votes. Maybe only 75 million show up, right? Yeah. 75 million show up, depending on the states, and all it takes is 10, 15,000 from each state. But I think that's a big role, or that's going to be a key to victory, is he's going to have Democratic voters stay at home. And you both have said it before. He's great at getting his voter base out. He's also, talking about Trump, he's also great at getting the other guys' voter base out that are voting just because, he's on the ticket.
And again, I think it'll be fun. I think if he's the nominee, it'll be fun to watch. Watch what happens.
When's the next debate?
Wednesday.
Doing our Slack channel, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was hoping maybe you're going to be on the road.
No, I'm home all week.
Well, shoot, man, we'll lay a quick one down afterwards. That's always fun. Maybe, but yeah, it's be interesting with Trump. I want to give a shout out to Kurt. a big win, 6-man football, Claude High School. 6-man football just blew out Meadow. I think it was a high school, might have been junior high. Either way, big blowout. That was a big win for them because 6-man football, man, you got what there's the small schools. You familiar with 6-man football?
Uh-uh.
Oh, well, 6-man football is when a school is not big enough to field 11 dudes. It's just not enough kids. So they play a
Sure.
version of football called 6-man. It's all running. It is all running. So, man, with these small schools, you got what you got. It's very,
Right.
I mean, it's almost luck. Like we happen to have 4 fast kids this year, like super fast. And, size isn't necessarily as big a deal in 6-man, different rules.
Sure.
But, yeah, so I know that Claude was kind of hurting because some of their athletes got hurt, maybe not the luck of the draw. So been not necessarily a rough season still in the beginning, but man, they just had a great win. Curse the coach. So congratulations to it. But Kurt's always looking forward to basketball season. That's his deal. So he's a basketball coach. But anyway, so congratulations to Kurt, and gave a few shout outs this time, but I always forget somebody. But listen next time, maybe I'll remember you. That's all I got, Roger.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for everybody out there that continues to listen to us. It's kind of crazy because our episodes haven't come out as as numerous as they were in the first year that we were doing this. But you brought up a valid point. Then COVID, everything was shut down, and so we had nothing but time. So it gets harder and harder as our viewers and listeners see to get all 3 of us together. So we're trying to get some stuff out on a pretty regular schedule. But amazingly, our followers, man, stay consistent. We don't really have that much of a drop off. So maybe they're still liking what we're putting out there. So thanks for everybody who's stuck by us, keeps listening. Keep your canteen cups tightly secured.